Okay, so chapter number 3, the basis of human behavior. Now, the basis of human behavior, it means that there are certain bases on which the behavior of humans are responsible, right? So, what are those two major bases? First of all is the biological basis, right? And the second one is what? The socio-cultural. So this chapter is divided into two parts. In the first part, we're going to read about the various biological bases, various biological factors which are responsible for a human behavior. And in the second half, we're going to read about various social and cultural factors. Into that, we're going to study the new terms that is related to culture and society. But yes, all those terms will be new for you, but very interesting, right? So let me be very clear. First of all, just keep this in mind, children, that whenever we study this subject, whenever we study psychology, we just take the biological things, the biological processes only for our information, just to get our knowledge enhanced. Although it is required, but it is not required to that extent that you have to remember each and everything whenever this biological part is concerned. Let's take example of this chapter. So this chapter, as I said, it's divided into two parts. So the biological basis part is only for your knowledge. I will never say, to learn it by heart. But yes, as from the point of view of exam and as from the point of view of your knowledge, you should know each and every term, that how does behavior is affected by various biological factors. So do not think students who doesn't like biology, don't start thinking कि biology तो वापस आ गई है, वापस पढ़ना पड़ेगा क्या ये सब. ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, बहुत brief में है. Only this chapter consists of a little bit part of biology. And after that, in chapter number 5, we're going to study about ear, eye, and about the sense organs. That's it. Otherwise, we are not dealing with the biology at all. So the things which we are going to discuss today, you people have done it already in your 9th and 10th standard science. So it will be very interesting and easy for you. Fine. So let us start the basis of human behavior. Now, the first word, whenever we talk about the evolutionary perspective, so the word comes evolution. Now, what does this mean? You all have heard this word. Evolution refers to gradual and orderly biological changes. Evolution of the species, you must have read. Yes. So what is it all about? Evolution refers to gradual and orderly biological changes that result in species from their pre-existing forms. Now, are you able to recall the things? Yes. How does evolution process take place? These are certain gradual and orderly biological changes that result in a particular species, be it animals, be it humans, from their pre-existing forms. Now, in response to the changing adaptational demands of their environment. As you all know that we were not like this from the beginning. Yes, earlier the ancestral, the apes were there. They are very much similar to the present monkey species, right? So we all were used to be like that. But gradually and in a very orderly biological changes have occurred, and we now have acquired the present physique and the behavior. So this is all about due to what? The adaptational demands of the environment. Environment is changing, yes, day by day. It takes a lot of time. It takes thousands of years to change. It is very slow. But yes, these are the adaptational demands of the environment. So what happens? What is the result? Physiological as well as behavioral changes occur due to the evolutionary process that are very slow, and they become visible after hundreds of generations, right? These are very slow processes. You all know about dinosaurs. Yes, there was a time on the earth dinosaurs exist. Yes, but what happened? They were not able to fulfill the adaptational demand. So the species has extinct. Now we cannot see even a single dinosaur on the planet Earth. Fine. So this is all about evolution. The species which are able to adapt themselves to the demands, they exist, right? Certain changes happen gradually and very slowly, and it is very slow. Hundreds of generation takes place to see that effect. Fine. Now, what all terms you're going to explain in evolution? First of all, you all have heard the word natural selection, right? Natural selection is what? The traits, that characteristics associated with the rate of survival and reproduction of the species are the most likely ones to be passed on to the next generation. So natural selection leads to the evolution of new species that are more effectively adapted to their particular environment. Natural selection, the species which are adapting effectively to their environment, they survive. Fine. And how it is done? There is a word which is very famous, which is very common, in fact, nowadays, selective breeding. You must have heard the researches, you must have read these researches in newspapers that selective breeding is done among animals, even in plants, in vegetation, right? What is this selective breeding? Suppose, let's take an example, selective breeding of horses or other animals these days are done. What does this mean? The breeders, the people who does the selective breeding are known as breeders. So breeders select the fittest and the fastest male and female horses from their stock and promote them for selective breeding so that they can get the fittest horses. Understood? What breeders do? They select the very fastest and fittest male and female horses. For breeding, male and female both are required, right? You all have studied about this in your science. So they are selecting the fastest and fittest male and female horses and they go for the breeding. So result comes out, which is known as natural selection, selective breeding. They get the fittest and fastest type of species. Now, fitness is the ability of an organism to survive and contribute its genes to the next generation. Now, what is happening out of selective breeding? The organism is able to survive, the fittest and fastest organism is able to survive, and it is contributing its genes to the next generation. So that is passing from one generation to next generation. So this is how the species continued on the planet with lots of changes. And changes, we always keep this in mind that changes are both physiological and behavioral. Right? Physiological, you can see, just see the human beings. What has happened? I'm going to tell you three important features of modern human beings that differentiate them from their ancestors. Now, what are those major important features which differentiated us as we are now from our ancestors? The first feature is what? A bigger and developed brain with increased capacity for cognitive behavior like perception, memory, reasoning, problem solving, use of language for communication. So the first feature is what? That we are carrying a very developed and bigger size brain. And that brain is capable of doing all cognitive processes which include memory, perception, remembering, reasoning, and problem solving. So this is an important feature. Is this brain was there with our ancestors long centuries back? No, it was not, right? The second feature is what? Ability to walk upright on two legs. Now we are walking on two legs. Earlier, what we were doing? we were just walking in the same manner as monkeys does, on 4 legs. So what changed has occurred if we talk about physiological ability to walk upright on 2 legs, right? Now the third one is what? A free hand with a workable opposing thumb. Very important. We all are having hands, and what is the key feature? That we have a opposing thumb to hold something. Just imagine if we have only fingers in our palm, will be able to hold something? Yes, no, we cannot. So an opposing thumb is required to hold something, to have a grip on something, right? So these three important features makes human beings differentiated from their ancestors, right? Now next, what is important, we have to a little bit elaborate uh, on the behavior now. Our behavior are highly complex and more developed than those of other species because we have got a large and highly developed brain. All agree with this thing? Why we are different from other species on earth? Why the human considered the most intelligent species on earth? Because we have got a very bigger and developed brain that is capable of doing various kind of processes, as we just discussed. Now we have got a large and highly developed brain. So there are just two facts about human brain. This is only for your knowledge. Firstly, the weight of the brain is about 2.35% of the total body weight. So can you imagine that brain weighs about 2.35% of the total body weight, and it is highest among all species. And there in the bracket it's written a very interesting fact that elephant is a very giant animal, right? It is very big in size, but the weight is only 0.2% of its total body weight in elephant. Secondly, what is the important fact? That human cerebrum is more evolved than other parts of the brain. We're going to discuss about the various parts of the brain also in this section. So there is a part of the brain, cerebrum, and it is very important for the intelligence of a human being. So they are saying that human cerebrum is more evolved than other parts of the brain. That is why our brain is capable of doing all kind of mental and brain activities, right? So this is just about the evolution. What is natural selection, what is selective breeding. Then we'll just give the three important features which will differentiate human beings from their ancestors. And after that, you can just give this information, the two facts about our bigger and developed brain. Now, last paragraph, what it is saying that these evolutions have resulted due to the influence of environmental demands. Now, a question arises that what are those environmental demands which, force some evolutions to be occurred? We have just talked about that adaptations have to be made, right? So adaptations to what? To these kind of environmental demands. What are those? If we are concerned about animals, so what roles they play? What are those environmental demands? The ability to find food. Yes, as an animal, their biggest problem, their biggest task is the ability to find the food. Avoid predators. Predators mean their enemies. Basically, animals who eat other animals, who are non-vegetarians, right? So avoid predators and defend one's young are the objective. So what are the three main things to encounter or to avoid their enemies, right? To find food and to take care of their young ones, of their children, right? So the biological and behavioral qualities which are helpful in meeting these objectives increase an organism's ability to pass it on to the future generation through its genes. Second thing, what comes if a certain species is successful in meeting all these environmental demands, then what will happen? It will pass it on genes to the next generation. So in this way, the generation goes on and on, right? The environmental demands lead to biological and behavioral changes over a long period of time. So this evolutionary perspective, I think it is clear. Just underline the main things and keep on explaining, right? Now let's just discuss the biological and cultural roots. Two things are there, biology and culture. What is this? An important determinant of our behavior is the biological structure that we have inherited from our ancestors in the form of developed body and brain. The things which we have just discussed under evolution will come under biological perspective, right? Now next is what, as as human beings, we not only share a biological system, but also certain cultural systems. Now comes a very important part. What is that? That as human beings, we not only share the biological part, but also certain cultural systems exist. These systems are quite varied across human population. What does it mean? That we have different cultures. If we talk about a single Indian culture, yes, take an example, but into that Indian culture, there are variety of subcultures exist, right? Related to different kind of religion, different kind of caste, different kind of societies, right? So there are many kind of cultural systems to operate. All of us negotiate our lives with the culture in which we are born and brought up. We all share a different culture, right? We have different customs, we have different religious practices. Yes, we all see different things in our home, right? So these things we see right from our childhood and we imitate them, we follow them, and we just grasp all these activities into our personality. So culture provides us with different experiences and opportunities of learning by putting us in a variety of situations or placing different demands on our lives. So what culture is giving? Very important part of life, the experiences. And at the same time, the culture is also providing you various kinds of opportunities, and that is also in variety of situations. Various demands always operate, right? Such experiences, opportunities, and demands also influence our behavior considerably. We'll talk about all these things in the second half of the chapter. We are just going through the introduction. So they are saying that culture is providing you various experiences, various demands, and various opportunities, right? So this was just an introductory part of the chapter. We have discussed the biological, the evolution perspective. I have just given you a very short introduction on cultural roots or the cultural aspect of human behavior. Fine. Let us also start discussing the next topic. Again, now we are coming on the biological basis of behavior. Fine. So biological basis of behavior, when we talk about, so the most important and the very basic thing also, neurons. You must have heard about this word neuron. Now, what is a neuron? Neuron is the basic unit of our nervous system, right? We have a nervous system, central nervous system, fine, peripheral nervous system. All have done this in your early classes. So try to just relate the things, try to recall the things. So in biological basis of behavior, how does information passes? So for that, a very basic unit of our nervous system is there, which is known as neuron, right? Now neurons are specialized cells which possess the unique property of converting various forms of stimuli into electrical impulses. Getting the things? See, we are encountering various kind of stimulus in our environment. Stimulus could be anything which drives us to react, which drives us to act. So stimulus को कौन convert कर रहा है electrical impulses में? How does information travel in our body? Into in the form of electrochemical signals, right? So these neurons are turning those stimulus which is present in our environment into electrical impulses. Very important task neurons are doing, right? So they are specialized for three things. Remember, reception, conduction, and transmission of information in the form of electrochemical signals. Neurons are what? Specialized cells, right? Now what they are doing, they are converting stimuli present in the environment into what? Into electrical impulses. And they are also responsible for very important three processes. What are those processes? First one is what? Reception. Reception means to receive the signals. Conduction, to go to that process. And transmission, to transform it from one part of the body to the other part. So these three processes, please learn as it is: reception, conduction, and transmission of information in the form of what? Electrochemical signals, right? Now, don't have to learn very much about neurons, just you can learn for your knowledge that nearly 12 billion neurons are found in the human nervous system. And they are of many types, vary considerably in shape, size, chemical composition, and function. This all you don't have to learn, just read it for your knowledge, for your information. Again and again, I'm saying the same thing. Now next, what is important? Now we're going to explain that how information is transferred from one part of the body to the other part. Now we are still talking about neuron, the structure of neuron. It is given on page number 46. So while just listening to my lecture or while reading this part, refer the diagram given on page number 46. So that will be easier for you to understand. The soma or cell body is the main body of the nerve cell. It contains the nucleus of the cell as well as other structures common to living cells of all types. Whenever we talk about the structure of neuron, which is the main body or important part, the soma, as it is given in the diagram, you all can see, right? So what is the other name of soma? Cell body, right? So soma or cell body is the main body of the nerve cell. It contains the nucleus of the cell as well as other structures common to living cells of all types. Right, next comes dendrites. Now what are dendrites? These are the branch-like specialized structures. कैसे लगते हैं? How do they look like? Like branches of a tree. So dendrites are the branch-like specialized structures emanating from the soma. From where it is emerged? From the soma. If soma is there, you all can locate it. Out of that soma, what is emanating? The dendrites. Now, what does dendrites do? They are the receiving ends of a neuron. They receive the information, and these are the what? Receiving ends of a neuron. Their function is to receive the incoming neural impulses from adjacent neurons or directly from the sense organ. They are receiving the incoming neural impulses. What dendrites are doing? They are receiving the incoming neural impulses from two sources. Either they are getting these neural impulses from adjacent neurons, right? The neurons which are adjacent to them, or they are directly getting these neural impulses from the sense organs. Fine. Now let's move further. On dendrites are found specialized receptors which became active when a signal arrives in electrochemical or biochemical form. See, any information, any signal is in the form of a electrochemical or biochemical form. So there are specialized cells, so they become activate whenever a signal arrives in these form. Which form? Electrochemical and biochemical form. Fine. Now next comes at the terminal point, the axon branches into small structures. You all can see axon, figure 3.1. Very thin line is there, just like a very thin small pipe. Axon is there. So at the terminal point means the point at which it is ending. So at the terminal point, the axon branches into small structures called terminal buttons. Now these buttons have the capability for transmitting information to another neuron, gland and muscle. What are these terminal buttons are capable of? They are transmitting information to another neuron. Neurons are present, lots of neurons are there, right? To any gland, we'll talk about various kind of glands, and to the muscles. So what are the important parts? The soma, right? Then comes dendrites, then the specialized cells, and then we are talking about terminal buttons. Neurons generally conduct information in one direction. This is an interesting fact that neurons, every time they conduct information only in one direction. That is from the dendrites through soma and axon to the terminal buttons, right? They are conducting information in one direction. They are starting from dendrites. Where are the dendrites? In the soma. And where they are taking this information to the axon, or you can say to the terminal buttons, right? Now next comes the conduction of information from one place to another in the nervous system is done through nerves, which are bundles of axons. Now what they are saying, that conduction of information, how it is done in the nervous system from one place to another in the form of nerves. You all have heard about various nerves, sensory, motor, mixed, right? So this conduction of information is done from one place to another in the nervous system through these nerves. And nerves are mainly of two types. The first one is sensory and second one is motor. Now there are other names as well, so just remember we can also say sensory nerves as afferent nerves. Please learn the spellings carefully, because sensory nerves are known as afferent, which is starting from A, word A. And the other, which is known as motor nerves, what is the other name? Efferent nerves. Spelling is starting from E. So do not confuse in between the two. Sensory and motor, it is clear, right? What is the other name of sensory? It is known as efferent, A. And what is the other name of motor? Efferent. It is starting from E. Now what are the functions? Sensory nerves carry information from sense organs to the central nervous system. Very obvious, as we are naming it sensory nerves. So what it is doing, it is carrying information from sense organs. You all know how many sense organs are there, right? So they are carrying information from sense organs to the central nervous system. And what this efferent nerves is doing, it is just doing the opposite. It is carrying information from central nervous system to various muscles, glands, and organs. Right? So these two are working in opposite direction. Sensory is doing, it is organs to the central nervous system, and motor nerves, they carry information from central nervous system to various glands, muscles, and organs. Right? It is clear. A motor nerve conducts neural commands which direct, control, and regulates our movements and other responses. Very important and very general term, motor nerve, how you can associate the things that we are able to move our body parts. We are able to do various kind of activities just because of the motor nerves, because it is conducting neural commands which is directing us, which is controlling us, and which is regulating our movements and other responses. There are some mixed nerves also. Sensory motor we have studied, but the third type of nerve is what? Mixed nerves. Mixed nerves, it consists of both parts, sensory and motor. That it is conducting both kind of functions, motor functions also and sensory functions also. Fine. So, ma'am, please stop.